Moves from the Couch by Lifestance Health. I'm Nicolette Leanza, and on this episode, I'll be talking with Melinda Zappone, a clinician from our Tarrytown, New York office, and we'll be talking about her experiences with trauma-informed care. So welcome back, Melinda. Always great to have you on.
Thanks, Nikki. It's really great to be here.
You know, even therapists need therapy too, especially as we navigate our own personal issues. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, Melinda, to talk about how therapists are people too. Right? Definitely a follow up from our previous episodes as
Yes,
well.
hopefully I'm more of a person than I was last time,
Right?
and more of a therapist
Right?
too.
That's all what we're trying to do. Just continue to expand our horizons with things for sure. So, well, I know you've been on before, but tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about yourself and also about your project ENYA.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking because you give me a general idea of what the questions are, and I thought to myself, you know, how do I describe myself? Like, who am I, kind of a thing. I guess I went down a little bit of an existential hole because I was kind of thinking to myself, who am I now? I could say the credentials that I have, but I think with Project ENYA, which basically stands for Everyone Needs You Always, ENYA, and it's basically a kind of my experience um, being a therapist through the pandemic, losing my mom in the pandemic, both to the pandemic situation in a way, but her cancer, and then realizing that although I'm a trauma therapist because of lived experience with therapy and trauma, I also had repressed trauma that kind of opened up when my mom passed away, and it really made me feel like um, who I am is someone who we call it in our profession like doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
um, when an individual comes into therapy, it's oftentimes when they're working through trauma, it's like the work.
Right.
Um, and I feel like I'm someone who has never shied away from the work, even in the middle of being like 17-year therapist and then realizing I have to go back to therapy. I kind of knew deep down like it could kind of break me, but it's also not going to be. If it breaks what I was, it's going to kind of be something. I don't want to say better because it's not like that, but that's that's kind of who I am. So I do have a lot of I have credentials, but I feel like I've been this person who is a good model in a way for, hey, you're coming to session and I am asking you to like do the work, um,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not just getting rid of symptoms.
Right.
But I'm Munchkin to my sister. I'm Melins to my brother. I'm Auntie Melinda. I'm just Melinda. And I feel like I'm I, I always want to be like a feeling to someone, so when they walk away, I don't want them to be like, oh, I met with my trauma therapist or alphabet soup at the end of my name.
Right. Right.
Um, I feel like I want them to have a felt experience of, getting closer to themselves, like
Right.
through the interaction with me.
Oh my gosh, Melinda, or should I call you Melins? I like
Melins.
that. No, I love that. I love that because it's truly what we remember about interactions isn't what was necessarily said, but how we felt about it. It sounds like you definitely look at in your therapy sessions with your clients. It's about the feeling they're walking away with about yourself, about the therapy, the whole work. So I love that.
Well, and now that I've been to therapy many times, but recently going back for such an intensive, reworking of my whole like childhood, I'm realizing how hard it is to be an individual in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And the littlest thing, I remember one time being devastated because a patient like rejected me. They didn't want to come to therapy because they said like I think it's moving too fast. Like we're only 3 sessions in and I feel like I'm moving a little too fast. I want to take a break. And I remember being devastated.
Mm.
But now that I've gone back to therapy, I realize like I wasn't in tune with that person. I was probably more in tune with what I wanted for
Mm-hmm.
them.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
again, so that felt experience is so important because you have to not go where you want to go with the individual, but like kind of read them out, feel them out.
Right. Right.
So important.
I no, I agree. Well, as we're jumping in here, So I want to start our conversation. So talking about trauma-informed care, talking about just trauma in general, how therapists navigate their own, how we help guide our clients as well. But let's first go with the term holding trauma.
Yeah.
Tell me what that means, holding trauma.
Okay. So this concept is like evolving literally as we speak. Um, in the kind of common, uh, like research based situation that we're in, and like collective understanding, we are all very familiar now with fight, flight, or freeze. They've added fawning onto it. This is like the trauma response. That danger is in your life somehow as you see it, and it's a physical experience, it's a body experience. We know now that like all experiences are a physical experience before they're kind of a mental experience, and so depression is held, anxiety is
Yeah.
held, stress is held. So we're definitely realizing that there's a brain chemistry that happens with our experiences, and there's a tissue, there's a cellular tissue experience that happens with trauma. So that's kind of like understood now. But and I didn't think I was going to do this, but just an anecdote kind of thing
Sure.
is coming up into my mind. Where we're headed, I think, is so they did this experiment where they studied women with anxiety, and they studied three experiences, kind of women with anxiety, fear situations happening.
Mm-hmm.
And one experience, they scan the brain as the woman is going through the experience alone,
Okay.
and 12 centers of the fear areas of the brain lit up. Then they did a brain scan of a woman going through that experience, and a stranger is holding her hand.
Hmm.
8 areas of the brain lit up in the fear activation center. And then they did a brain scan of a woman holding the hand of a partner, an intimate partner, and 4 areas of the brain lit up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I use that as example because now what we understand is that, obviously your brain and your body is going to log experiences, but
Yeah.
sometimes the level of fear getting trapped in your system and not being processed is the issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way we view something helpful like therapy now is not to say that um, I am this external element that's going to like comfort you and fix you through it, but more this idea that you need certain amount of safety around your difficult experiences, or else they will get
Mm-hmm.
locked and you'll be
Mm-hmm.
holding it
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
certain patterns. So, case in
Excellent
point
point.
today, this podcast that I'm doing today, in a way, is my trauma response. I struggle with holding trauma in the sense of when I feel danger, I go to making everybody else okay. It's wonderful that I can transform that into making sure myself is okay and knowledgeable about trauma and experience
Mm-hmm.
with trauma to do this podcast. But if I was just like helping everybody at home and being a therapist without that kind of body centeredness, that could
Yeah.
go very the wrong way and be like the bad trauma
Yeah.
response.
Fair point. Fair
So
point.
now what we're learning is holding trauma is not such a bad thing. We're all holding experiences,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever pattern you use to regulate the danger and get it back to an okayness in your system
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is really important. And then also that becomes a healthy pattern that you can repeat. And to use the other example of the study, you also want it to be an experience that has a relational component, that someone is kind of in your sphere while
Yeah.
you're able to do that.
Right.
And if
Right.
you're asking them for help, like a
Mm-hmm.
therapist holding trauma, therapist holds space for you to
Yes.
hold your trauma.
Yes. And that's the term I'm definitely familiar with, and I use with my own client, kind of holding space for them. Love that term for sure.
Yeah. So lately, I say to my the people that I do therapy with, is I say I'm a therapist, and try not to say like my therapist, because it's like you're the therapist, right? I'm the agent that helps you see the therapist in you.